Hello.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm good. What a beautiful day. What a beautiful weekend. At
Mostly. Yesterday was kind of gray, but the whole week leading up to
was
that
great.
was nice.
Least it wasn't hot.
Yeah.
Although I saw somebody on Facebook bitch about the fact that here it is, it's August, and temperatures in the 60s and 70s. Like, what the heck?
Sounds good to me.
I know. It sounds like whoever's complaining about that should move to Florida.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, why would you complain about it? I think it's fabulous anyway. But yeah, back to school. I saw a post on Facebook earlier that a lot of the schools are starting school this week. Today, they're back at school, and I think Chicago public schools start next Monday.
Hmm.
So seems very early. I don't know. I mean, I think they're starting early, I guess, to try and maybe catch up because of the pandemic or something, because they missed so much school. I guess. I don't know. I don't know why they're starting so early, but
Well, I think every year we're always saying, well, it seems like they're starting really early this year. So I,
well, no, usually the Chicago public schools though typically start after Labor Day. But
Hmm.
Labor Day is a little late this year, and they wanted to get started before. I don't know.
Hmm.
When is Labor Day? That's a good question, right?
First Monday of September.
Let's see here. Labor Day is September 5th. So maybe they felt that was a little late. Who knows? I don't know. Anyway, I sent out my my email this week's need to know, and I basically copy and pasted Leonard's analysis of why buy versus rent. And he goes through this process where he says, okay, assuming that there's 2% inflation every year. And of course, if you have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, your mortgage payment doesn't change every year because that's locked in for 30 years. But real estate taxes will go up. I mean, he assumes they go up for the sake of argument with inflation. So 2% a year. So at the end so you start out the first year, you're paying a $2,000 mortgage payment versus a $2,000 rent payment. And at the end of 30 years, you would be paying like a $2,700 mortgage payment and something like a $4,800 rent payment.
Hmm.
And he said at the end of 60 years, because he said, in a lifetime, you might live in a place 60 years. That would never happen in my lifetime. But being a military brat, I would never. It's unfathomable to me to stay in a place 30 years, but a lot of people do that. he,
Yeah.
he said, anyway, he said, I don't know what the 60 years was about, but anyway, whatever. He said that the rent payment would be something like, I don't know, $6,800 or something like that. And of course, after 30 years, you pay it off your mortgage if you stay in a place that long. So all you're paying is your property taxes and, your other maintenance fees, et cetera, insurance, et cetera. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting, though. I thought it was an interesting way to think about it. And I've never taken into account that the cost of inflation. Of course, inflation is very much in the headlines these days and whatnot. So
Hmm.
he used a 2% rate inflation because that's what it averages over a number of years. Over the years, it averages out to about a 2% a year inflation. But if inflation is more than 2%, then of course those numbers get skewed even more. But I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
I had a rental that I handled last week, and I put it in. This was the week weekend before, not this past weekend, but the prior weekend. I put it in Thursday evening around dinner time in the MLS. And between Friday and Monday night, I had something like 15 showings on that rental. It's a condo that, I'm renting for a client. And we had 8 applications.
Oh, really? Wow.
I know. I mean, the rental market, and I guess the rental market downtown is really active too, right? Where you are?
Yeah. I haven't been in it so much, but yeah, team members are saying it's just been crazy. Yeah. And it has been for quite some time.
Even though the prices are depressed in River North, right?
The
I mean,
sales prices are,
that's what I mean.
the rental prices have not been.
It's hard to understand that, isn't it? A little bit, that dynamic.
Well, I mean, I feel like I do, but I mean, it might be counterintuitive on the surface, but yeah, I mean, we have a lot of new people entering the market, and in a time and a time not only culturally, but because of the pandemic and everything too, where they're not necessarily wanting to buy. They don't know yet where they're going to be longer term, and like we were just talking about. I mean,
well, I think that's always been the case with the downtown market, that you've had a more mobile occupant. Somebody fresh out of school who's just getting started in their career, who knows they're only going to be here a couple of years and probably be promoted up the ranks and get shipped out to other cities and whatnot. So I think that you see more of that in the downtown market than you would out in the neighborhoods, for sure, right?
yeah, it's always been that way, but I mean, more so now that people, if they come here for a job or they're working downtown or whatever, they know they're less convinced of how long they're going to be here than they ever have been before.
Yeah, and a lot of them are working only in the office 2 or 3 days a week. They're still working remotely, primarily from home, right? Well, like Stump, he's only working 2 or 3 days in the office, right?
Yeah, his whole company is 3 days in the office. Yeah.
And I think
a lot of people are like that. Yeah. Roger's at where is he? Schwab? I can't remember.
I don't know.
He's called Schwab now, but same thing. I mean, they're only in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as well. A lot of the banks, all that stuff. So yeah, people are still,
And I think my niece, who just came to town, she graduated. Well, I guess she graduated in June. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I guess she graduated in June. She just moved to Chicago. She actually got a sublet downtown at Division and State, and it was a 3-month sublet, and she was thinking about buying a condo, but she's working at Northern Trust, and she's probably back home in DC as much as she's here in Chicago. I mean, they because she's new and just out of school, they want her in the office, to be trained up and stuff. But still, they're very flexible with her hours and when she can be in.
mm-hmm.
She did end up renting another apartment for a year, but she's not expecting to stay here in Chicago. She's expecting to be moved out. She works for, I don't know, is Northern Trust a national company? I guess it is. I don't know.
That's maybe a Chicago company. I don't know if they've got any.
Yeah, maybe she's not expecting to stay at Northern Trust. Maybe she's expecting to move up in her career with another company or something. But she's right out of school. So anyway, I guess she's not my niece. I guess she's my niece's daughter. So that makes her my grandniece. How can it be? I'm not that old. But anyway, so what do you got going on? What's new in your market?
Well, I had those buyers out. I was just thinking about them when you were talking about that had buyers out last week looking at like $5 to $7 million properties, but same situation with them. They're kind of looking all over the country because they can work from anywhere. So they're trying to figure out where they want to live, where they want to raise their daughter, where, they're comfortable, all of that sort of thing. So, yeah, they're looking, from East Coast to West Coast, mostly New England to Chicago though, but I think they've already ruled some other areas out, but yeah,
They're not going out. They're not going out to the West Coast.
no, I don't think so. It doesn't look like that. That's if they had considered it earlier on, they've ruled it out. So, but
So how did Chicago compare in their search? Are they looking like in Texas, like Austin, or?
No, they've been looking mostly like Westchester County, New York, Connecticut. They've lived in Manhattan before, but they weren't really looking to do that. Chicago, Lake Forest. I think they've already ruled most other areas out.
Nice. Okay.
But yeah, they live right now. They were living in Manhattan. Since COVID, they've been living in upstate New York, but it's a little too rural for them. But in any case, yeah, it's just interesting. I think we're seeing, at all different levels, we're seeing, people, they can work from anywhere, and so they're, making those decisions about, well, where do I want to live? What fits my lifestyle. So I actually think that's kind of nice to see. It's one thing when you get moved around because you have to, or because the job takes you. I think it'll kind of culturally change things. The more the more and more people that are doing that, they're living where they are because they're choosing to live there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an interesting dynamic, right? But I mean, I suppose people have. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, people choose where they want to live anyway, don't they? I mean, to a certain.
I think no, I don't think so. I mean, I think they do, but I mean, if you got moved to a city, because of a job, and then you got the kids in school and you started working, you made friends, you've kind of planted yourself, but that doesn't mean you actually chose to be there. And I think a lot of people would still say, like, well, would you like to live on the beach? Would you like to live here or there? Would you like to live in an area where it's more conservative or more liberal, or you've got more diversity around you, or less diversity for that matter, whatever? I think a lot of people would be like, yeah, that'd be great. This would be great. That'd be great. But this is where I live, but it was really, I think in many cases, chosen for them, and then they chose to stay, but mostly because they were planted, at that point, and rooted at that point. But I don't know that that most people have really like this, like, this couple has money and they can buy a house anywhere they want to live, and a nice house is that. So they literally have the freedom to just go, we can live anywhere we want. Where do we want to be?
I'm just thinking about how I came to Chicago, and actually,
you were brought to Chicago. You didn't come to Chicago.
Yeah, my dad was in the Navy, and his last duty was at Great Lakes. And when he retired from the Navy, they stayed here. And I went to school here in Chicago and just kind of stayed here. But what I was going to say is we moved up to East Ravenswood back when Carl was an infant, because it was a lot of space for cheap. And we got this great apartment. We always needed a lot of room. I don't know why. For some reason, we're just kind of people that need a lot of room. I mean, right now there's two of us, just Bob and I, and we're in 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,900 square foot condo. And we could use another room, actually. It's for my piano, which I don't have anymore. But I digress. But we moved to Ravenswood because of the economics of the situation. And when we got there, and of course, at the time that we moved there, it seemed like we had, moved out to the middle of nowhere, because we were kind of Lincoln Park, DePaul folks. And and my dad and my folks lived downtown. I'd been downtown. And so to move out to East Ravenswood was quite a move for us. But once we got there, we really loved it. And we lived in that neighborhood for over 30 years. And I still consider it my neighborhood. I mean, we've bounced around a lot since in the last 10, 15 years. We, as empty nesters, we have the freedom to move. It's a little more easier. We're not worried about schools and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, I mean, so I'm not quite sure what my point is, but I think so.
I think you're going to prove my point, but that
but we chose the neighborhood because of economics, and then sort of put down roots.
You were in the Chicago area already. You had kind of been brought there. I'm sure Bob had a job there at that point. You probably had a job too, but then you chose that area because of economics, and then it ended up suiting you, I think. But yeah, I think that's probably a more typical story, you know, not that just somebody, you know, a young couple sits down and goes, okay, we can live anywhere in the country we want to live. Where do we want to go? You know?
Yeah, I know that would be tough, right?
Yeah,
I think that would be a tough. I think that would be a tough. Well, I mean, I think if you could live anywhere, I think you'd want to be near family, where you already have kind of a community in place, right?
Maybe.
Well, I mean, I know that you left Oklahoma specifically because you wanted to get away from that environment, right? Which is kind of what you're saying about the people coming from upper state New York, that they're moving specifically because they didn't feel like they were an environment that supported them and who they were. And that's why you came to Chicago. I mean, right? Is that why you came? Why did you come to Chicago? You could have lived anywhere, right? At that point in your life.
Well, I don't know if I saw it that way. I was pretty young, but I think quite honestly, the fact that I didn't have family here, not that I'm not close with my family, but at that point in my life, at like 21 years old, I think the fact that I had no family here was it was one of the things that drew me here.
Yeah, it was freeing.
I was studying architecture, and it was a Mecca of architecture, and I had never been here. All of that, the mystery of it, the promise of it all, you know, drew me, and the fact that I could kind of start all over and have my own life and be my own person here without family putting me in a box, you know, and a lot of people I knew, whatever. But I don't even think I realized that at the time. I just knew I needed to go, and there were things that sounded good about Chicago.
Yeah, you were in an environment and in a community that didn't support you and who you were. I guess it's almost kind of like people leaving a small town. You know, the young people leave a small town. They can't wait to get out. But Tulsa's not exactly a small town, is it?
No, it's 1 million people.
Yeah.
But you know, I think Chicago will compare well, you know, for the most part. And obviously not everybody wants to be in an urban environment. Not everybody wants to be in a place that has 4 seasons, you know, and all of that. But I think overall in that new paradigm, you know, where people are kind of choosing where they live, I think Chicago will compare pretty well. People really do like Chicago, you know, and understandably.
Well, I mean, even like with the young people who kind of moved out, I think during the pandemic, because it's like, you know, whatever, but they've come back again because they want to be able to walk to their neighborhood restaurant and get a burger and a beer or whatever, and you know, on a Tuesday night, or you know, whatever it is, and or go to the shows. And I mean, when the 5 years we lived in Lake Forest, it was there weren't those options. You know, it was get in your car and drive, and B, even the places that you get in your car and drive to, I mean, it didn't have the vibe, in my opinion. I'm a big city kid, obviously, you know, and I love the city, and that's why I choose to live here. But to me, the suburbs didn't offer the vibrancy. And as an empty nester, which is kind of the other side of the coin of somebody just out of school, you know, those kind of 2 bookends, if you will, you want to have the opportunity to go to places in your neighborhood, walk to them, and enjoy.
Well, Some people do. Some people could not care less about that. You know,
Right.
I'm somebody also like you that cares.
Well,
about
I qualified my comments by saying, you know, clearly I'm a city kid, and and I love what the city has to offer in terms of cultural offerings and the museums and the concerts and the parks and the, you know, the lakefront um, and the food and the restaurants and, you know, just the whole thing that the city offers.
We have to go to like 20 different coffee shops every month.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. We make a hobby out of it, testing out the new coffee shops, right?
All right. Well, I guess we've solved the world's problems.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. What do you got on docket for today?
I've got a Dylan call coming up here in a few minutes, and then I got to head out to Buffalo Grove.
To where?
Buffalo Grove.
Oh, what's in Buffalo Grove?
A showing.
You have a listing in Buffalo Grove?
No.
Oh, you're showing somebody a property in Buffalo. Where the heck is Buffalo Grove?
Come on, you know where Buffalo Grove is.
It's out west. It's like, what is it like?
Next to Arlington Heights.
Huh?
Right next to Arlington Heights.
You're showing property out in Buffalo Grove?
A rental house, yes. We've had
yeah.
a discussion about this.
Yeah, you've told me about this. Yeah, you've got that card, but yeah, never mind. All right. Well, it's a beautiful day for a drive out to Buffalo Grove. Have fun. Thanks so much. Everybody have a good week.
Talk to you later. Bye.